Figure out where I'm going to put this though. All right.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us for our early Juneteenth celebration. I know Juneteenth is on, in the middle of the week, but we wanted to get ahead of the day, especially since, most people are busy during the week. And I want to basically thank our guest, artist Derrick Kearney, for joining us. If you could introduce yourself, we're having a slight technical difficulty, so he's going to be speaking through an extra device. There might be a little bit of some static, but hopefully we can hear him. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi. Thank you for having me on today. Where do I even begin? So the art journey for me has really been one about healing more than anything. A few years, well, actually, let's say about 9 years now ago, I really found myself on just this sort of pathway where I needed to find a way to express myself and deal with, what was going on in my head, figure out a way to really let that sort of thing out and share that with the public. To kind of put a real good sort of basis on, the story here. It was 2016 at the time. My mom was sick with cancer. And I had ended up where I came back home to Palaca, Florida, where she was living at the time, and just found myself like, okay, I'm back in my old childhood bedroom. I have basically everything from my life, including a collection of vinyl records. And I was in there just painting the walls, this random purple color of all things, but just painting the walls like, all right, I need to, spruce up this place after not being here for 20, 25 years. And I ended up spilling a bucket of paint onto one of the crates of records. So after the initial picking my jaw up off the floor moment there, I cleaned off what I could, and I was like, all right, well, I'll just set these aside and see what I can do with them. And it took some time, took some energy, to really go back to that crate there and just see what I could really get into. I experimented for a while with just doing traditional paintings. I'd always been a fan of the beach and did a lot of like beach photography, sunrise and sunset photography. So I, experiment with just doing basic acrylics and watercolors of that. Did just some basic also portraits, and I did one of my mom actually from a few years before. Just real kind of nice things. But I wanted something that really allowed me to move with color and be vibrant, be alive. So I went back, found that old crate of records, and really just kind of immersed myself into this idea of doing abstract art using the records there. And I found where I could do fluid art with them, figured out a process of being able to mix the paints together, different additives, and create different effects. And I had like one day, this was April of 2019, actually my birthday that day. And I finally gathered up all the, materials and was like, okay, I'm going to try this out. I'm going to actually, put a foot forward and see what I can do with it. And I ended up making, a couple little records, because I didn't at the time want to experiment with buying canvases because I didn't know how this was going to go. I was using paints from the dollar store, honestly. And Elmer's glue, of all things. That's my pouring medium. I mean, real basic stuff that I found at this time. So I experimented with it and came back with something that honestly looked halfway decent for the time. And I was just happy with that there. Went back to work the next day. And within minutes, I'm called into the HR, office there. And I hear from them that I'm no longer needed at that job. It was something I had worked at for about 13 years at that point, actually. And to find that I was like, oh, So after another pick my jaw up off the floor moment, I remember, couldn't even say much at that time. And I remember the only words I could say was, "Oh, I guess I haven't time to paint," and didn't really think about it. It was just like, oh, I guess I'll just go home and try this out again. And it ended up kind of blossoming where, it's just one of those things that we get into a point of we want to try everything. And, I know last week you did this talk with people who, um, a lot of times we'll hyperfixate on things, because of how we are. And I
Right.
just hyperfixated right into this idea of I'm going to paint. I'm going to just do this. I'm going to get into it. And really, it just became a healing ground for me, even for now. Now I find myself, it's almost like a ritual. It's like church for me. Every Sunday, yeah, I'm going to sit through a service and amen, but I'm also going to sit down in my studio and either draw something, paint something, break out the fluid paints, etc., and just see what I can create out of that. So that's really where it kind of came from for me. A lot of, as I mentioned, a lot of what I do, there's canvases, as you can kind of see in the background here. There's a couple of them back there. And actually, that's the picture with my mom back over here in the corner and, just different things like that. But a lot of it just became doing paintings on the vinyl records, as you can see here, just different ones like this. Yeah. And you can see this in actual vinyl. I put little hangers on the back just so that they can be hung up, once they are done. And I will also put a resin coating on them. But it just became a thing of, okay, let's take as many colors as we can in a lot of cases and throw them onto the records. I like to actually use a lot of metallic paints, color shift paints, a lot of glow in the dark paints. And really the idea for me just became to figure out a way to express the idea of light breaking through darkness. Um, there's a lot of darkness that, we can all see, and, we don't even need to discuss any of that. But instead of finding ourselves kind of trapped by that doom and gloom of everything, just figuring out a way to say, okay, there's darkness, but there's also light, and it's something that you'll find, if you're a religious person, definitely you're going to find this. If you're not a religious person, you're still going to find this. I can say that I found just as much of this light breaking through darkness sitting in a church as I did sitting at a rave at 4 o'clock in the morning with laser lights everywhere. Because yeah, with raves, obviously lights breaking through darkness at all times. And yeah, so it's just something where, it's finding that sort of key of happiness sort of thing.
That is awesome. So I would love to see more of your work on the vinyls, because when you were talking about it, I was like, did he actually paint them? And you're showing me that you actually. So can you tell us about your process of how you paint the vinyls and then actually make it stick and stay?
Yeah. So what happens? Like I said, I take all my paints there, use acrylic paints normally for this. I have experimented a little bit with oil. Oil doesn't stick as well, and it takes a little bit longer to dry for that sort of process. So it's mostly acrylics, which is kind of a plastic sort of paint, as we all know. But I take the acrylic paints, and I found that I can mix them with different additives. Water works very well if you want something especially to be, how do you say it, museum archival. You use spring water for that. You can also use different, commercial grade pouring mediums. Liquitex makes a good one. Golden makes a good one. All the way down to like, craft barrels and all that sort of stuff to make different pouring mediums. As I mentioned before, glue, just simple school glue, Elmer's glue, really good for a medium. One thing that I do actually like using is this product out of the hardware store called Floetrol. Say kind of paint spreader additive. They use it a lot of times in spray paints, to help everything flow there. But you take your paints, you mix them up with, the additive there, and you're looking for a consistency that's kind of like warm honey as far as being able to get it to move around. And then you just really pour it onto the surface. One back here, just to kind of show, and this is one that doesn't have the covering on it. So This one here I actually did 2 weeks ago, and I just put the phone down for a second, but I just took everything and poured it out, little strips of paint there, and then took a blow dryer actually with this one and blew it out towards the sides, to create the different effects there. There's all sorts of different things that you can use. This canvas right here, actually, what I did with it was I took a plastic sheet and, or actually no, I took a um, little, little cake spreader. Actually, is what I use for this one. It's a cake spreader, but you can use a plastic sheet also. And I just used it to swipe over the surface with a white paint, over the different colors there, and that creates this sort of effect. So yeah, you do have different effects that you can build with these. And then, like I said, I just did these a couple weeks back. It takes usually about a month for them to fully cure and dry, to where you can go back in and add the resin coating on top of them, or even a varnish coating for your canvases. Usually about a month, as I say, for them to fully cure to get to that stage. And then, what I just like to do, I like to put the resin coating on there just because it allows for the vinyls, once they are done. I can show you a couple other ones. Once they are done, it gives for a nice little finish onto them. It's a protective finish. So, you can have this inside or outside if you need to. It's able to, the glow paint that's in there. When you do turn off the lights, turn on a black light, you can still see that kind of breaking through. Your metallics will still kind of shine through there. And, it just breaks for a real good setup there. Some of the other things, this here actually, I don't know if you've ever seen where they have the guy online, I think his name's Caleb Shroud, and he does with these giant buckets, he does like a swing over the paints with these giant buckets. Well, obviously I don't have space in my house for a giant bucket, but I set up a swing area where I was able to do, just a smaller version of that onto the vinyl there. So, that became a method. This here actually, it's kind of a swirl in a sense, but again, I took the cake spreader and just used it to go around and swipe through, making the swirl pattern. There's some that I've used where I've done marbles on top, and just take the marble and kind of twist and turn the record a little bit, to make the pattern. Just whatever really comes to mind there. So it becomes a thing where it's whatever your imagination kind of leads you towards. I've seen people who, they've used even like simple things out of their kitchen, forks, knives, spoons, in order to make their patterns. I have a couple that I actually worked on just recently where I took the paint, set them down, I put a little plastic sheet on top, and probably the plastic sheet did more than anything, but I just put some catnip on top of the sheet and I let my cat go to town with a toy. And it came out with the craziest. You got to pay that. Listen, I'm cleaning the litter box. You got to help me out here, buddy. Okay. Right. So it's just whatever your imagination really comes up with. The idea that, obviously there are things that you want to get right as far as making sure that you have kind of the right ratio for paint versus pouring medium. But it doesn't have to be perfect. That's really one of the things that I love about this, is that it's not a perfect science.
Right.
A lot of times when people think of doing art, they think of, okay, I have to draw this intricate little line, right here. It has to be just the right size. No, I can literally just take 5, colors, 10 colors, and just throw them down and come up with this. I can literally.
Your work is so beautiful, and you're saying that it takes a month to cure. So it sounds very time consuming, like work intensive, time consuming, patience, a lot of patience.
It's a lot of hurry up and wait. I mean, just alone mixing colors will take. That can be a full day itself, just mixing colors and getting, even if you want like 3 to 5 colors, that can be, an afternoon right there. And then, the process of adding the paints to the vinyl, Yeah, that might take, I mean, if you watched any videos, and I have some videos online on YouTube if you care to watch, also on Facebook and Instagram, socialartguide.com. But
Make sure to add it in the chat so that people can click on it.
I definitely will. But yeah, if you've ever found yourself, you watch the videos might take 5, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe, to make a painting on this. Like this could have probably taken me about 12 minutes, as far as being able to add in the different colors, getting them chosen, blowing it out, spinning and everything. Yeah, that's about a 12-minute process. And then I have to wait a week before I can even move it enough to put it in a place to dry. And then, like I said, it's up to a month for it to cure before I can put the plastic covering on there, the resin covering. The resin normally takes a day to cure itself once it goes on, So yeah, it's a lot of wait time. It's a lot of, okay, well, what else can I do? Or how else can I, buy my time? Or let me just have some patience. Let me really just kind of relax and think of something. But also, like I said, it's a lot of patience involved, but a lot of work also. There's a lot of labor that is involved in it.
Right. And so, you said that you first discovered the vinyl method years ago when your mother passed. Have you been painting? I mean, it seems like you've been painting prior to that, right?
Yeah, not. I mean, like I said, I'd done just some very basic sort of things. I mean, and it wasn't really something that I did a lot. I would maybe paint a sunset, and something like this. This is an oil painting actually that I made, but I would paint something like this, and it might be the only thing I would paint for 2 years, just because, okay, this is a hobby. This is just something I'm doing for a weekend. I'm just going to fill a spot in the wall. Great. The painting I actually did of my mom did that over Mother's Day weekend one year. And again, same thing. Okay, just very basic, kind of just something more for me, and not really something that I really planned on sharing at the time. Versus, okay, well, I can really, once I really got into this and really found myself at that point there, like I said, 2019, where I was just, I'm out of work. I need something to do with my time between filling out applications and everything. You end up with all this extra time, and it's like, okay, well, how can I spend it? What can I do with this? And I just kept making these. So
that's sort of like when you said that's when you found yourself, like in that moment.
In that moment, yeah, I really did find myself to where I was, I spent a lot of time, growing up. It was like, okay, I want to do something creative. I experimented with, doing music. I actually went to school, studied music business, played tuba throughout high school, middle school, high school, and college, some choruses and everything. Did DJing. It's actually how I ended up with a lot of the vinyl records, was doing club DJing, nightclubs, different events and stuff like that, even weddings. So, I always had a real good basis for creativity. Painting was just something that was extra. It was like, okay, every once in a while I'll paint, versus now it is, okay, every weekend or every week, or sometimes even, every couple days, every day even, I might find myself down here. Something kind of drives me towards it. So yeah, it exploded. And it's just one of those, for me, when I found that way to express, that way to release, I just gravitated towards it. I just grabbed it by both ends. I was like, I'm doing this.
Right. So would you say that what inspires you? Like, what is that moment that sparks in you and you're like, oh, I gotta go paint?
It's a lot of things, really. I don't want to be the person who's like current events and doom and gloom or whatever. At the time when I was working in news, and I would come home and just not watch news. So it's not really okay, I saw, something on the streets. It's more of a, what did I see in my day? Did I see a sunrise? Did I see a sunset? Was there, were the birds chirping outside or a flower? Did I walk by a smiling kid or, cute old couple or something, sitting on a bench? Just the happy sort of points of life are what inspire me really more than anything to come down here and paint.
That's awesome. Yeah. So how, do you have a store or a website that you sell your paints at?
So right now I'm actually in the process of redoing, my website to include a store. I did mention it's thesocialartguy.com. I do a lot of the sales mostly online through Instagram and Facebook. I have the Facebook and Instagram page that I'll put things on, and it's actually worked out probably better than anything. I did try out doing the Etsy stores and different things of that nature, and didn't really like having as much of the control over the sale aspect of those. The idea when I do get the store relaunched is that everything would be able to sell directly from the website. But even with that there, because of how things kind of change, the website would be more for larger pieces, older pieces per se. A lot of the things here though, I'm able to sell through just Instagram and Facebook. I'll put up a post probably, every couple months. Hey, it's the summer art drop, the spring art drop, fall, whatever. And just line up where I've done, 10 or 15 pieces during the last few months and actually got them to the point where they're ready to go. And, I've noticed even now, like I just did a spring art drop. I dropped them in April and went back in May and just did, just little stories on each. Hey, this is, glittering dolphin. Just picking up something here. This is glittering dolphin. And, I made this using a dolphin cutout and, was doing different things of that nature. I like dolphins at the beach. Yay, buy this. And shockingly enough, that sort of thing is work, just putting that sort of personal touch, personal story into the post there to where people can see it and say, okay, well, this person's an actual human. They made this. It's not AI. It's not, computer generated. They put their little piece of soul into this, their little piece of their heart into it. And, you just have a little conversation with them. Yeah, this is what I do, and this is why I do it. And so Facebook, Instagram. I think the Facebook. I am. I have to go, and I think it's just. I think it's just Derrick R. Kearney on TikTok. I have to go look and see what the actual
You can literally sell directly while you're going live. Like people will be like, "I want one."
I do need to do that. I do need to actually get back into the TikTok game. I'd done a lot of the videos, the process videos, where I was putting those before on TikTok, and they were actually doing very well because one of the things I like with sharing the process videos on there is that you can pick, audio from anywhere, pick like common audio. So it kind of became a little music video where here's this 1 minute clip of me doing a painting with your latest song type of thing. And that kind of blew up there. So I would like to go in now that you mentioned that and do a couple lives on there. And then also the Chinese version is going to come. Oh, Red Note. That's what it's called. Red Note.
Be careful with Red Note. They will steal your IP. I put some things on there before I realized. And I love Red Note, but I don't want to put my content on there.
All right. I will check that. I will make that point there. I like talking with the people on Red Note. They're really chill. It's a lot of people over in China. And, anytime I put stuff up, even just some of the kind of fun stuff that I do, because I'll still do some fun drawings and things of that nature. Like I mentioned, I have a cat here, so I'll do some like little fun sketches of my cat, and they love that,
Oh yeah, they love Red Note.
Oh my goodness, it's like the thing. So
you're not a person if you don't have a cat in Red Note.
No wonder they like
it. Cat, because I'm a dog person. Let me borrow your cat so they can like me.
No wonder I get so many mad. Us the cat. Got it. Got it.
And here's the
Okay.
cat. Yeah, when I got on there, they were like, "Where's your cat? Are you real?" I'm like, "I have to have a cat to be real? I can steal somebody else's cat."
Nope. I'll try that out though. Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to know, like, just speaking towards young artists, especially in the African American community, what kind of like encouragement or advice would you give to them?
So, and I was actually kind of thinking of this earlier, because this is Juneteenth, and we do have a young African American audience out here. Don't be afraid to try something and be alone in that. Like, as artists, we are, as creators, writers, musicians, everything, we are kind of this sort of outside group. It's almost like once we discover that we are an artist, especially as being an African American, once we discover we're artists, it's like we find our table at the lunchroom.
Right.
You know, I mean, yeah, because growing up, I can say, all right, I'm in middle school, I'm in high school, and here's the jock table. I wasn't sitting over there, and there's the cheerleaders. I'm not sitting over there, and you've kind of find yourself like, okay, where do I want to go? And then once you figure out, oh, I can create something. I can, there's something in my head that needs to come out. It's like light bulb just goes off, and it's like, oh, here's your table, here's your people, here's your, here's your group. So yeah, definitely yeah, you found your tribe, exactly. So it's definitely something where, I would say, for young artists out there of any kind, but especially young artists of our kind, don't be afraid to try it, even if you're doing that alone, because once you do take that step, your tribe will come, your group will come. Those people are out there, those other misfit souls, those other, everyone else is out there. They're just as, as you are. They're just as afraid, just as nervous, just as whatever as you are, but they're just as willing to experiment. And, I've met so many people since becoming an artist, especially, within our community, where it's just like, oh, you're an art. Well, let's collaborate on something. Let's do something together. I have a piece that's actually up in my hallway area, but it was a collaboration I did. It's called The Middle. And it was between a writer and myself, where she wrote out this poem called The Middle. And then I was like, oh, let me see what I can take from this and, build out of that there. And just looking at that, so many little examples. I look around my house and see different things where it's like, oh, well, I tried this with this person. Or I tried this because of that person. That person inspired me over here. And, I sat through this here and it was, uplifting. So, yeah, definitely don't be afraid to try something, because at first, yeah, you're alone. But once you do it, your people come to you.
That's true. One thing I've always thought of is that I wondered just sort of the percentage of artists, creators, writers are neurodivergent. I almost feel like neurodivergence sort of tilts towards artistry and creation. I mean, I might be biased, but
It's funny. I never really thought of those words. I mean, I don't think a lot of us really thought of those words for a few years back before they really kind of came out or kind of became popular. When I was a kid, it wasn't that you were neurodivergent. It wasn't that you had ADHD. It was that you just need to sit down. I'm gonna take off my belt. You just need to sit down, boy.
Right. Like, you need to stop talking and be quiet.
Yeah, you need to stop talking, be quiet. You need to write down. You don't need to be drawing something on your paper here. You need to write down those notes off the board there. Do your work.
Right.
So we didn't necessarily have that sort of thing there back then. And I'm very happy kids now where, and adults also, where we're able to do that sort of thing. Part of my week this past week was just sitting through. I went and did a first round of ADHD testing, because it's like, okay, I want to figure this out. Am I really just, scatterbrain where I'm just throwing things out, or is there a reasoning behind this? And yeah, it's definitely something for me. just being, again, finding that table at the lunchroom where I can sit at.
There you go. You know, the funny thing is that I've never actually been professionally or officially tested, but I was actually told by ChatGPT that my 5-second attention span meant I was probably probably on the ADHD spectrum. I was like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and honestly, like, it's been a year now since I discovered this about myself, and it literally explained my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
I went on TikTok and was like, is there anybody out there like me? And all of a sudden I had a whole bunch of people like me when I had never had people like me before because I didn't know, what I was.
You didn't know which table to sit at.
There you go. And so it's an amazing feeling. Like, on the outside, it might seem like you're happy to find out you have that. When you don't know your entire life and you don't know why you are the way you are, yes, you're happy to find out when you finally find out.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like that.
Thank you. Now we have answers. Okay. Now we can actually move forward here. Yeah.
So how do you think that just in terms of discovering this about yourself, how do you think that that it affects your work or that you incorporate it into your style, or how does it affect the way you process your art?
I think for me it becomes a thing of, first off, accepting that I have to have the creative space. I have to have the creative time. I can't just put myself into a box, because it's very easy. We're told that we have to get up, and I have to get up tomorrow 5 in the morning and go to my little job, do the whole thing, all that. And we're told we have to do this, for how many ever years, and that's supposed to be it. And we come home, and if you have kids, you feed your kids or feed your animals and do your laundry, make your meal, and do it all over again.
Right.
No, I actually need to do something with this energy. I actually need to, and hey, there's an explanation for why I'm working this sort of way. And it helps me in, the professional life also. Because now that I can say, okay, well, maybe there's a reason why, my files are looking this, or I'm able to file stuff in this sort of manner is because of ADHD.
Right.
Okay. Maybe there's a reason why, I want to arrange my calendar in this sort of way, or, work through tasks in this sort of manner.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So
once you have to fixate on something, if someone interrupts you, it's derailed.
yes, it's derailed. So
just leave me alone. Let me do this.
it's like, yep, the door's closed for a reason. There's a sign on there. You got to give me like 10 minutes, and then I'll come out and deal with you there. And it's the same thing. It's like, okay, it's Sunday. Let me have my little space, have my little time. And when I'm mixing up my paints, I know, okay, I need a little bit of time to mix paint here, but I also need to have a little bit of time to take a break and do something else, and let my mind kind of wander a little bit. And, let's keep a little notepad over here in the corner in case there's an idea. Let's keep a sketch pad over here, even at work in case there's an idea. That way we can work with these sorts of things.
Right.
Yeah.
So how would you suggest to other artists to create sort of a work art balance? Because there's work, you have to pay bills, and then there's art that is like your passion, your joy. Like, how do you balance that?
That's still something that I work with. I was having a conversation with my therapist, and it's one of those things where you find yourself spending 55 minutes talking, and then for 5 minutes they say one random thing that just kind of flips the light switch somewhere in that hour.
Right.
And he said to me this last time when I was there, he's like, I think you're an artist first and a job second. I was like, yeah, you're probably right. And obviously, like you say, I have to go to the job. I have to, pay the bills. The cat has to have food and cat litter and all that sort of fun stuff. So, nope, nope, nope. Cat has to have food and litter. Its own separate food, apparently. Can't eat mine as much as I've tried. So, yeah, once you figure that out, it's like, okay, well, let me find ways because of this, because I have to create, I have to, be creative. So let me bring a, sketch pad with me to work in case an idea comes up. Let me bring a notepad with me going out in case an idea comes up. That way, at least I can write down the idea or jot it down real quick so that when I am back in Studioville, I can, open that back up and say, okay, here's my idea from Tuesday. Let me see what I can do with it.
Right. Right. That's awesome. Well, I would love to see the paintings behind you. They look so beautiful, but I can't really see them clearly.
Yeah. Let's see what I can do here. Velcro. So this one here, these are actually 16 by 20 that I have here right now. And one of the things that I really like about this style of painting especially is that you can put this in any sort of direction and it comes out to being something totally different.
Right.
So even as I flip it, I was like, oh, see, there's a face here that I honestly had never seen before. It's like two faces. Totally different from when I flipped it over here, and had it in a different aspect. So, that sort of respect there. And both of these are actually again that bloom sort of technique. This technique I call it bloom because it looks like little flower blooms when it comes out. But I just took with this one with the straight purples, some other greens and everything kind of mixed in it, mostly purples. Put them all on the line there and just took the blow dryer and blew it out towards the sides. You see. Same thing. I use Velcro to kind of make sure they stay on there. But same thing kind of with this one here where, I'm able to use that same sort of method. Take the painting, put it off to a line, take the blow dryer. This obviously has a few other colors that, added in, some greens, some reds, yellows, blues, pretty much every color. Just now I'm thinking about it. But yeah, just as much expression as I can really think of with these sorts of things. And then, I did do that. Yeah. So this one over here, this is more of where I was saying I did the swipe sort of technique where, I took a plastic sheet and, all of the paints are kind of put on more of a puddle sort of thing with swipes across. I took the plastic sheet and came down, on top of that sort of makes the effect there. So you get a blowtorch actually. I don't know if you can see where there's little like sort of bubbles that kind of come through fills. Yeah, a lot of that's created just in using a blowtorch on top of the paint, where the paint will develop different air bubbles inside of it, and then also the weights of the different paint, will kind of weight in, up and down on top of each other there. So that'll create some of the different effects as well as everything you can see there. Yeah, it's just as much, as much work as you can as far as being able to bring in the different colors and just mix them around, move them around, figure out what sort of, what sort of style that you want with those there as far as expressing. Yeah. And yeah, they're all different. I don't think that I could make the same painting twice. It's almost impossible to do. Even if I use same colors, try to do the same, technique and method, they would not come out the same.
Right. Each one is very unique.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank you so much for coming and showing us your artwork. Please make sure that you put all of your social media links in the chat because I will be sharing out the video and everyone will be able to reach you on your platforms.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I can definitely do that for you. I'll get everything kind of shared out there just because, it is important. I think that, for everyone just to kind of have a way where, we're able to communicate, we're able to grow, we're able to, as artists, as creators, we're able to connect with each other and, you
Right.
know, do things. So yeah, definitely we'll share that with everyone. Um, yeah.
Right. So I just want to make sure you're part of Creator Core, right? Like because of
Yes.
our little network group. Okay, awesome. Because that's I want everybody, like you said, to be able to connect and network in a place that's safe and
Mhm.
far away from scammers. Because there's so many on the internet. I'm trying to avoid them. So
Yes, yes. I remember like when we first connected, I'm like, let me make sure she's a human first.
right. That's what I do now. I try to connect like on camera first to sort of verify.
Mhm.
Are you human? Okay, good. But thank you so much again. This was painter and artist Derrick Kearney. He is on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and I believe you said you're also on TikTok. You said you will put down all of those links.
I will put all the links in here in just a few moments, and we can definitely make sure that everyone has a way, where they connect with me and get everyone, whatever, and what I would say, if you see something you like, just shoot me over. I'll definitely work with you, as far as, because for me, it's more about being able to just sharing the artwork with everyone.
Right. Right. And also, please feel free to post your information in the group, the Creator Code group as well. But just
Okay,
make sure you post so that people can connect with you.
awesome. We'll do.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me out. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Of
All right.
course.
Bye bye.
Hang this here.
Okay, I just want to thank everybody. We have one more speaker that is coming up in another 8 minutes. It's Reverend Gilbert. He is going to be speaking, and we're going to take a 1 or 2 minute break. So please stand by, and we will have a small, tiny talk before he comes on. Okay, so what I want to go over just a very short amount of time. We are celebrating Juneteenth today, as well as, just sort of uplifting speakers, artists, painters in the community, and also trying to, put out a positive imagery and some education for those in the community, the young people in the community, teenagers, minors, children, young adults, so that they can sort of get information and education about what they could possibly gear their paths towards, whether it's creation, art, um, writing, speaking, motivational speaking, having their own business. Those are the kind of things that we want to encourage, along with a love of education, because we don't have a lot of that today. So for a tiny talk, what I wanted to discuss today is education is a child's key to destiny and rewriting the script. Why do we call it rewriting the script? Because the words that you speak to your child while they are developing is the script that they will run through their mind for the rest of their life. Education builds self-worth, and this is something that is extremely important, something that I don't think that we emphasize enough, especially in disadvantaged communities. Education is more than just imparting knowledge, giving your child knowledge. Education is more than that. Education is a mirror. It is the way that a child can see themselves, a way that a child can value themselves. It reflects a child's perceived worth in the eyes of authority, society, and their own internal dialogue, the way that they speak to themselves about themselves. Children who do not have a good, self-identity might call themselves stupid inside their head. Why? Because they have not been told you are intelligent. You can do this math problem. You can read this book. You can create this art. They are not told that. They don't hear that. And so what do they develop instead? They develop negative self-talk, negative internal dialogue. When children are not taught or encouraged to pursue higher education, the system sends an implicit message, which is simply just a quiet message. It's not spoken out loud. It's the quiet part that nobody says out loud. You are not expected to go above or transcend your current station. This feeling, invisible and pretty, stuck in place, unrelenting, can stunt the child's self-concept, their view of themselves. It can stunt their development and clip their wings. It can prevent them from healthy growth and a productive future. Children take in the expectations of others. Children internalize, they take in, they ingest, they believe the expectations placed on them by educators, caregivers in their communities, right? So if your child is in a school and they're constantly told, you can't do this, you're not smart enough to do this, you're always getting in trouble, guess what? They will believe it. They will believe it. They will internalize it. They will ingest it. They will take it in, and it will become a part of them. If a child is told explicitly, on purpose, or through omission, without saying it, but through action, that college, trade school, or intellectual growth isn't for them, they're far more likely to interpret this as evidence that they are incapable or unworthy. They will believe that they do not have the ability or the intelligence to go and get a higher education or go and do any type of vocational activity that would actually better their lives. Over time, this causes emotional and psychological damage, resulting in feelings of incompetence, discouragement, and shame. Over time, if they have been told, whether through actions or words, that they are not good enough to get a higher education, they will not believe that they can. They will never believe that they can. The importance of education isn't about grades or GPAs, which is, basically the grades that you get in school. It's about the dignity of possibility. When the curriculum lacks representation, we are not taught about our history, when we are not taught that there are people in our community who have succeeded and succeeded well, and guidance counselors funnel only certain students towards college prep, the message becomes very clear. Your lane is already chosen. Basically, stay in your lane. This is not for you. And that is unfortunate, and it is a problem. And for children whose identity is still forming, this can birth what Carol Dweck calls a fixed mindset, making them believe that their intelligence, worth, and future are static, unchangeable, and set in stone, meaning they do not believe that they can better themselves or better their situation. They believe that they are stuck. So we're going to basically continue on just a second to the next slide. To reverse affirming a child's worth through education, to reverse this psychological chokehold, education must be reclaimed as an identity forging, self-esteem building experience. We need to continue, especially now in this generation where, yes, going to college is expensive. Yes, getting a higher education is expensive, and still encouraging your child towards that is extremely important for their self-esteem. They need to believe that they have the ability and the intelligence to do it. There are grants out there. There are scholarships out there. There are ways to get a higher education with monetary assistance. So when we infuse our children in their classrooms with the expectation and possibility, and expose all students, not just the gifted ones, to pathways of growth, we aren't just opening doors, we are demolishing false ceilings. These ceilings that children can develop, saying, I can't get this high. I can never own my own business. I can never become the CEO of a company. These are lies. These are lies that they end up telling themselves because they have not been told or taught anything different. So we must teach our children that they are the architects of their own future. And how do we do this? We affirm their intelligence. We affirm their love for education and reading. Numerous studies have shown over and over that children soak up what they are exposed to. Therefore, it is necessary to encourage a love of reading and education in our children by changing our language when we speak to them about these subjects. One thing that I have constantly done with my children is, hello, you might want to play on the Nintendo, but I bought you 2 books. What about those books? Tell me what's going on with that. Tell me what the story is about. Tell me what you like to read. When my child comes to me and says, I want to read this book by so-and-so, and it's about warrior cats, I make sure that there's, nothing extremely bad in them. And then I go and buy the book. Why? Because that's better than having my child on Nintendo 24/7. Mark Twain says, a person who won't read has no advantage over one who cannot read. And Jacqueline Kennedy said, there are many little ways to enlarge your world. The love of books is the best of all. So, because we understand that studies have shown over and over and over that education and a love for reading is the best way to increase your child's self-esteem and increase their ability to have a productive future in the workplace, we can also basically affirm that with them by utilizing affirmations. Here are some daily affirmations that if you have a child that you can use. You can tell your child, I believe in you. You can learn from your mistakes. Keep up the good work. It shows. When they are working hard, even if they make mistakes, if they don't understand, don't belittle them. Don't put them down. Help them to understand, like, this is what it is. And if you have your own problems with education, then maybe, try to see if you can find some resources on the internet. YouTube has tutors, free tutors. I encourage my child to look up tutors on YouTube when there is something that I cannot help them with. You can also tell them, let's discover something new together, meaning let's discover a new book together. Let's discover a new science fact together. Let's find a book about giraffes or, biology. Isn't it amazing how stories can take us places? When they make mistakes on their homework, say, mistakes are proof that you're trying. Never belittle your child. Always uplift them. Even when they make mistakes, they are trying their best. Tell them you did a great job handling that challenge. Again, education and reading are absolutely key factors in healthy development of a child's emotional and psychological well-being. Instilling a love for reading and education in a child will not only encourage positive self-esteem and self-efficacy, it will provide them with clear guidance and direction for their future. And self-efficacy is basically like a sense of the ability to do something correctly and positively. It's the confidence, the self-confidence that every child needs in order to approach a task and continue on doing it without feeling like a failure. Affirmations and positive language regarding education and reading are a must to instilling this love in our children. So I would encourage everyone, if you have a child, to use affirmations with them in order to encourage a positive emotion about education and reading. So that sort of ends my tiny little talk for today. And I would like to introduce Reverend Gilbert. He is a childhood friend. I am very grateful that he agreed to speak today for this Juneteenth celebration. And I'm going to be adding him to the stage now.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I'm having the worst time with my sound today. This is the second time this has happened.
Okay.
It has got to be me.
Can you hear me now? Hold on. Can you hear me now? Okay. Make sure audio.
Hold on.
Testing.
Okay. Can you hear anything I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to call you and then put you on the speaker through the mic because I had the same issue with the previous speaker. It's got to be me. It's my fault. I don't know what's going on.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. There's a slight echo on your end.
Okay. How about now?
I believe that's better. So I just want to thank you again, Reverend, for joining us today. Long time no see. How is your wife and family?
They're doing great. They're doing great. We just had our Father's Day meal. They're a little sleepy, but they're doing well out here in 111-degree Vegas.
Woo, boy. I don't envy you. 100 degrees, my goodness. So why don't you tell the watchers in the audience a little bit about yourself?
Reverend Dr. Gilbert V. Richards II. Never planned to be a minister. Never planned to be a pastor. Originally from Oakland, California. Lived all over the country from Minnesota to the Bay Area. Now living in Las Vegas. I was kind of a late bloomer in education. Slow to finish my undergrad degree. Was a freshman in college in 1996, didn't finish till 2011. Got my master's in 2015, and then my doctorate in 2022. Had a lot of successes, a lot of failures, gained a lot of context on what Black excellence is, what achievement is, and what it is not. And it's kind of given me a new outlook on what God wants for me, how I do my ministry, and how I advise, especially young people, on how they can build a foundation for their lives and how you can live it in a way that's fulfilling, honoring who you are, honoring what God put in you, and so forth. So that's what I've been doing with my life.
Amen. So you said you got your doctorate, 3 years ago? What did you get your doctorate?
I got a doctorate of ministry from Cambridge School of Theology at Emory University. I specifically was focusing on how to end the terminal decline of nonprofit institutions through applying what's called an ethical leadership model, where I took 5 ways of doing ethics and using a transformational concept, basically balancing out what we call transactional leadership, which is always based on metrics and expectations and numbers, and adding things that impact people and help people to be better versions of themselves.
Okay. All right. So then I just want to, thank you again. I'm going to leave the stage while you go ahead and educate us.
Okay. One of the things that I've learned in the past, I would say 10 years, about achievement, about Black excellence, about how we frame our lives, is that the one track achievement mind doesn't work. That there's this thing about balance, there's this thing about fulfillment that we need to take in consideration. I, being born in the Generation X, what we were told from the time we could understand words clearly: go to school, get good grades so you can get a good job. The expectation, getting the good grades and getting the good job, happiness will follow. After we get the good grades and the good job, then we were expected to get married and have children, and the happiness would just follow. We were told to achieve our best and to do our best through education, and the happiness would just follow. But oftentimes, taking this good advice, which was founded in the fact that without an education, navigating the world to your best ability becomes difficult. We stepped away from this idea of balance. We stepped away from this idea of fulfillment, not just from an individual, but a communal understanding. And what I figured out is there comes a point with our generation, being Generation X and younger, that we need to reframe how we teach Black excellence. Yes, it's academics. Yes, it's business. Yes, it's multiple fields. Yes, we are that. But what is the purpose behind it? What are we trying to do as individuals and as communities? And what I found out was a few key things that I wanted to share tonight. First and foremost, the achievement does not create the fulfillment. Um, I come from a family. My great grandfather got his MD from a Harry Medical School. My mother is an MD from University of Minnesota. My grandfather on my mother's side has a doctorate. My aunt on my mother's side has is a PhD in clinical psychology, and there was always this thought that when I got my doctorate, that there was going to be this automatic breath of joy and the door was going to open. I thought the same thing when I got my master's, and definitely when I got my bachelor's, for how long it took me to get. But what I realized was the achievement does not hold the fulfillment, and that there's actually more value in the journey that you took to get there than the actual achievement itself. It talks about how your perseverance defined you. What type of growth did you have in order to go through it? What do you have to become in order to achieve that? That is what I found out is the real important part of that journey, because oftentimes we achieve these things and we get to the celebrations, and after the day is gone, we're wondering, what does this mean? Why aren't I as happy as I thought I'd be? Or where do I go next? So sometimes we have to stop making the achievement itself the destination. Secondly, the biggest lesson is the why. Now, um, Green knew my father. My father was a very jovial man. His nickname was Reverend Daddy P Funk in the choir. But my father also took the time out to teach me things like dating advice and how to be married, because he said, I'm his only son. I had two older sisters. I had no older brothers. So he would teach me certain things. And the weird thing that he would teach me was like, it needed to mean something to be married. It needed to mean something for someone to be in a relationship, which is kind of foreign to me, because all we wanted to do was fall in love and get married and have kids like the TV shows, because actually in the 80s and 90s, that was the big thing. But what he also would do is he also get me to go to church. He'd say, well, all the pretty girls of good quality go to church. Is what my father would say. He would make this my why as a teenager. And I'm like, for real, Dad? Okay, I'm going to be in church. And it was by osmosis that I got saved. And by osmosis, I started to realize what my call is. But all along, I still didn't know what my why was. He would take what inspired me at the moment. But after a while, I found out as we traverse through life, why are we going to college? Which means education is awesome. But if you go to school thinking pre-law and change to sociology or art history, that's fine. If you find out when you get to college that you're more vocational minded, that's fine. Your why will have more input to how you live your life than the achievements that you like. Sometimes we want to adopt other people's why because we think achieving what other people wanted to achieve will validate us, will affirm us, will make us better. But in fact, sometimes we do that and miss out on exactly what we wanted to do, exactly what we're best at. So, understanding your why becomes a very important factor. The next thing I want to talk about is opening your mind to the possibilities. I did not know how much I did not know until I went to seminary for my master's degree. I didn't know the concept of how much I did not know, because I thought my life experience and everything I've seen and everything I've read and everything I've learned and every place I've traveled, I thought I had a pretty good sense of the world. And what you find out when you keep an open mind, you will learn more of who you are and who you are called to be than keeping that closed mind. But what that also means is sometimes we don't have to have the tunnel vision. And what I mean by the tunnel vision is back to what we are told: go to school, get good grades, don't get married till you're 30, 35, 40. Sometimes you might meet the love of your life at 18. Don't need to get married at 18, but sometimes you may run into the right person at the right time. And as long as you're putting things in perspective, you don't have to put everything on your life to achieve one thing. You can do things in balance. And I found when we do things in balance, we end up having a more fulfilled life, a more balanced life. We end up having less regrets. We end up having more of a perspective. We're more comfortable with our mistakes and our achievements. Put things more into perspective. And I'm talking in this generality, and I'll deal with the specifics in a minute. There will be points in times where if you become successful and do everything you're supposed to do, and your finances are like whatever are beyond what you could expect it, so you never have to worry about money, and you own a home, and you can go where you want to go, and you may be married and have children, and your children never have to worry about anything. And if you do all of this, you can still be in a situation wondering, what do I have to live for? Where's my joy coming from? What purpose do I have now? Because often we put the achievement as the why. Often we put the accomplishment as the why. I remember after getting my doctorate, I was ecstatic. It was very difficult. It was not easy. I almost quit a few times. And I had a lot of joy for completing it. But afterwards, I literally sat and said, what do I do with this now? Because I put so much weight on the accomplishment rather than the why of why I did it in the first place. And the reason why I did it was that I felt ministry in the 21st century needed to evolve in a way to the needs of God's people now. And so I had to remember that, and I had to put things in motion um, that reinstated that why. Because I'll tell you personally, my big accomplishment that I wanted to be a dad, and I wanted to be a husband. Those are the big things. So I love my dad, and he seemed to be the happiest man in the world. So I figured if I get married to a good wife and I'm a dad, I would be the happiest person. And when I found out just being married and just being a dad, just the events do not make you happy, and you have to create the joy and create the happiness, and you have to be intentional, I started to understand that balanced mindset is so important. Now, the last thing I like to say is this: be intentional. And sometimes that's hard because especially when you're younger and even now, a lot of people will not ask you what do you want or how do you feel or what do you need. Especially being a black man and a black woman, there are certain assumptions about you. We've seen it with the political climate. We've seen it, and I know both Karina and I have seen it in academia. There are assumptions when you walk in the door that you have to prove that you deserve the seat that you're in, even if you are the top of your class. You often come under criticism more, and they'll check your academic integrity more often than others. There's a lot of things you can engage just starting from a younger end that makes it harder, and you have to be intentional about what kind of life do you want. You actually have to sit down and have the conversations. What gives me happiness? What gives me joy? Who do I want surrounding me? And who is good for me and who's not? And I say this because one of the side effects of being a high achiever is that you can be so focused that you will not see what's going on around you because you're in the midst of achieving. You're in the midst of doing what you do. You're in the midst of creating whatever you create, whether it's with work, whether it's with writing, and whether whatever it is. Sometimes you will not see what's around you. So if you don't take time to surround yourself with the right people, connect people with the right energy, and know what kind of life you want, you could wake up and turn around one day and say, all these people around me, they're really not my friends. All these
Mhm.
people around me, they're really not emotionally healthy for me. And you have to wonder, how did this happen? I cannot tell you how many friends, family, and associates I know who had gotten into relationships out of convenience because it was convenient for their job, convenient for the limited time they had, convenient for the group of friends they hung out with, and they were in that convenient relationship, gets married in the convenient relationship, and one day don't even know who they married. One day don't even know who they're raising kids with, and then asking, why did I get married? Where the reality is sometimes that we just need to be intentional. Say, hey, I want a partner that makes me laugh. I want a partner that's going to be honest with me. I want a partner that's going to get in my goofy chaos with me. I want a partner who won't judge the fact that I am petty beyond belief. It could be quirky things. I want a partner who will walk in, watch me watching anime, and will watch the anime with me, whether it's in English or in subtitle. These are things that we need to be intentional about because, and this is what I realize because I'm surrounded by a lot of brothers and sisters who have achieved academically, who've had successes in many different places and spaces. And the ones who are happy and have joy are the ones who discover how to balance the achievement with love and joy, who've learned how to figure out who they are and what fulfillment looks like, and aren't defined by their degrees. The every Everybody's like, "Oh, you're a doctor." I said, "Yeah, but it." My daughter was, let me see, 2000. My daughter was 6 years old before I got my bachelor's degree, and she was born 9 years after I was a freshman in college. And the reason why it took me so long is my father taught me the mortgage business, and I was making so much money, I didn't think I needed a college degree. And then 2008 happened, and I lost everything that I owned because I made having money and having things and all of those things at that time. That was the priority. I thought that's where happiness came from. And right. And then what I found out was education is not just what we learn in class. Education is the experience and the growth and development we have in that process. Because so um, that's what I wanted to share. Are there any topics you'd like for me to cover or elaborate on for this segment?
Just like what type of advice would you give like teenagers and young adults who, are still sort of looking for their path in education because you pretty much run the path.
Hmm. First of all, breathe. Like really breathe and not put so much pressure on a specific route, but really how they learn. How are they taking what they learn, not just from an academic state, but from a holistic state? And how does that direct them? Be honest with how disciplined they are, because to me, education is extremely important, but it's not just the academic side, it's the emotional awareness. I was talking to a friend. We grew up, Raymond Garland. I was talking to him about one of his sons. He says one thrives academically, one thrives through things that are vocational mindset. He could take apart a computer, he could take apart a car and put it back together. Just breathe. Learn that there's all sorts of intelligence, that your intelligence doesn't have to look like somebody else's, and be cool with how you learn. Um, I thought when I was young, because my mother was big on like Mensa and all this stuff. My mom was like that, and you know what? It made me miserable. It made me miserable because it was fun. My dad made me do reading book reports. He got find all these books, and then he would get my book orders, and then he make me watch Reading Rainbow, which I love to this day. Make learning fun, and don't pressure yourself to finish as much as give you space to learn.
Right.
And talk like you're doing right here with the showcase. Talk to people who've done what you've done. And I think that's the big case. The second thing, though, is for those who know where they're at and serious, start your scholarship game early because school is expensive.
Yes.
School is expensive. So yeah, that would be my advice for those 14, 15, and 16.
There you go. You said you spoke to Raymond. I know this is off topic. You
Yeah.
said you spoke to Raymond. How's he doing?
He's doing great. He actually, before I moved to Las Vegas, he was my barber. I
Oh,
saw him every week. Yeah, he's doing great.
okay. I always see pictures of him and his wife on Facebook. And I'm like, oh, hashtag, goals. They're such a beautiful couple. But I didn't know anything else about how he was doing.
Oh, he's doing great. I think he's about to retire from FedEx, but yeah, he was cutting my hair for like the last 10 years until I moved to Las Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I just want to thank you so much for speaking at our Juneteenth celebration. I had one other person who was like, it's early. I was like, I know, but during the week, a lot of people work. We can't necessarily just pause everything in the middle of the week. So that's why we had it a little bit early. Was there anything else that you wanted to add?
Yeah. You guys know this is like one of the smartest people I know. Like, I think she was in college before me, and I'm older. So when it comes to education, there's nobody better to take the advice, and I am so proud of all that you've accomplished in all your places and spaces, and I enjoy your TikTok too.
Oh, thank you. Oh, make sure that you also put all your social media links so that people can reach you on your platforms, because I know that I've seen you on some of your talking on TikTok about giving marital advice, dating advice, and I think that's really helpful, especially because people are so bitter nowadays, just bitter.
Yeah. I forgot my TikTok handle. I do that to vent sometimes. Tell you the truth, I just do TikTok for fun.
No, sometimes I go on there. I'm like, yeah.
Oh no. I was this is what it was. I felt like we all know what doesn't work, and I think every man and woman could tell horror stories till the day is long, but nobody's saying, hey, this works. Hey, that works.
There's a whole lot of don't do that out there, but not of what you should be doing.
Exactly. I mean, a lot of guys would be 10 times ahead if they just had good hygiene, but that's a whole nother Oh yeah. Hygiene is for the young kid. Hygiene is important. Do not put on clean clothes on a dirty body. That's another piece of advice.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. You have I love this format, and I'm gonna keep following. And it was a pleasure. All right. Bye.
Okay, so that was our speaker, Reverend Gilbert Richards, and again, a longtime childhood friend, has a beautiful wife and family, who was here to speak about just education and achieving. And again, this has been our Juneteenth celebration, where we have been trying to sort of uplift education, uplift a love of reading, of learning, for any young person, really, but specifically also for people in disadvantaged communities who might not have, sort of uplifting images or platforms that they can go to receive this kind of encouragement. So we just want to thank all watchers and audience members again for joining us, and we hope that you learned or gained something from this event.